Welcome, everyone, to another episode of USF Football. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the, I call it the rise to glory years in Division II for the University of Sioux Falls Cougar football team. The last time we talked, we were talking about, the move from NAIA to Division II, and now we've got, the USF team is fully playing in the Northern Sun Conference and ready to rock and roll. And so, as always, I'm your host, Chad Birger, also the sideline buddy on the USF radio broadcast. I've got Matt Witwicki here with me again from d2football.com, and then I'll let the players from that era just go ahead and introduce themselves. Start with you, Butler.
I'm Joshua Butler. I played from 2013 to 2017, defensive back from Aurora, Colorado. Been living back here like last 3 years, I think now. So it's good to be back here, but it was a very fun journey in Sioux Falls. So
Brady Rose played slot receiver from 2012 to 2016. Originally from Cumberland, Wisconsin. Now live in Apple Valley, Minnesota. Happy to be back and kind of reconnect with everybody now.
And the old guy, John Tidwell, played from 2011 to 2015, also from Aurora, Colorado. And I'm actually also in Apple Valley, Minnesota with Brady. So
Crazy. We just found that out right before the show, so awesome stuff. So anyways, we kind of left off last episode. We had talked about, the 2012 season. So going into the 2013 season, for USF football, a few things were, you'd lost quite a few of the players from the 2012 squad, reloading at quite a few key positions, including quarterback. Running back was kind of a question mark going into the season. Brady, you ended up playing quite a bit of running back that 2013 season. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, you guys opened up the season in 2013 at Duluth. What was it like to have so many new guys in key positions, playing maybe their first college game or things like that up at a huge opponent like Duluth? John, I'll let you go ahead and start.
All right. I mean, so for me, it was kind of, an interesting year just because I was one of probably the youngest, oldest guys on the team, just because the previous year I actually started. That was my first year starting. So coming into that next year, I was kind of like the guy everybody kind of leaned on, at least defensively. So for me, it was, an interesting year. It kind of had a weird vibe, aside from all the other years that I was at USF. But I feel like it was a reload year and a lot of new faces, like you said, and the coaching staff as well. There was some movement there. So we had to kind of get some things figured out from that side of things too. But it was definitely a learning year. And it kind of woke a lot of the younger guys up and kind of, I think, feeded them and fueled them to say, hey, this ain't us and we got to do better. So I think it was a tough year. That was, of course, my toughest year while I was there. So, but learned a lot from it. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, so you mentioned some of the coaching moves. Coach Anderson had left after the 2012 season, and Coach Grubb also left after that season. So we had new offensive and defensive coordinators going into the 2013 season.
Correct.
So like Joshua Butler, you redshirted that year, so you probably didn't notice a whole lot of those changes or whatever. But Brady, what was it like for you to have a new offensive coordinator that season?
Yeah, it was going back to that Duluth game was crazy because it was a lot of our first time experience being on a big stage like that. Duluth was a big name in Division II. Like for me personally, it was between Duluth and Sioux Falls when it came down to picking a college. So because they recruit heavily a lot of Wisconsin kids, because Wisconsin doesn't have a D2 program. So it was exciting. It was definitely a growth year. It was a growth game for a lot of us. But I honestly think that kind of launched a lot of us into like growth mode, being, I would say, leaders on the team as time went on. So it was good. I thought it was a great learning experience, and it was definitely different though, coming in with a certain amount of coaches that you got used to. And I was young. I mean, that was like my first year. So you get used to these coaches that recruit you, and you kind of build that trust, and then boom, coaching changes happen. You're like, oh, here we go. Now what are we going to do? So, no, I thought it was definitely a step into college football. That's what I would say.
Let me ask Brady for you specifically. I remember you were on the field that game. I remember I think you got knocked around a little bit in that game, if I remember right. Duluth, very physical football team. But did playing up at Duluth give you guys a better idea of the team you need to become? Between getting there on game day, seeing how things were up there at Molosky Stadium, and then also they were kind of where you guys wanted to go. Yep. So did you guys leave there kind of thinking? Obviously you're a little humbled. I mean, they win 32-7. It was a low scoring game to begin, but then they kind of took off in the back half of the game. Did you guys on that ride back? Was it one of those things where it's like, okay, we've seen where we want to be?
Yeah, I think it was an eye opener, especially for a lot of us young guys. I mean, you come from high school. A lot of people go through this transition. You go from high school being the top dog and being the top echelon of your conference, whatever. Then you go into college football thinking, oh, I'm going to hopefully be just as good, if not better. And then you see the size of some of these guys. You see the speed of the game. You see how a team actually comes together. You're not a bunch of individuals anymore. And you kind of walk out of there saying, all right, we stuck with them. So we knew we were just a little step behind. But no, I thought that was, like I said, that was a growth year. But that game right off the bat, you realize you can play with a team like that, but we have a lot of work to do. I think that helped us throughout the last 3 years of that, my time there anyways, putting together a pretty good run.
After, you guys have that game, and then you come back, you beat Northern State, and then you guys make a trip out to Mary. In this run that we're going to be talking about this year, Tidwell's already shaking his head disapproval at the mere thought we're bringing up Mary. But you guys lose 17-10 in a real popcorn fart of a game, as I would say. I remember watching that game, and that was the one game I think during this stretch where you look back and you go, you guys lost to a 500 or lesser opponent, which just didn't happen after this point. What happened there, and what do you guys recall?
I mean, for me, I probably remember it best, but just going to that game, it was, longest drive ever, 9+ hours, it feels like, sitting in a bus. So that was the first time we actually got to do that. But the whole feeling while we were there, like the vibe of the team and everything was just like, we weren't even playing a football game. It's like we were just going out there. We expected to win, but I think our mentality were like, I mean, we're USF. We should be way better than these guys, because we heard that throughout the league, Mary's not that great, blah, blah, blah. So, and we were just immature big time at that time, not knowing, going into this game, it's a football game, and you got to play to win. So I feel like we were just immature at the time, and thinking that just because of who we were supposed to win, and didn't have any fire behind us. It was just a weird game. That was probably the weirdest game I ever played in my whole career, just because the vibe was just strange.
So go from one strange, weird game. We're not going to bring up only negative stuff here, guys. I apologize. We're just starting off with some of the stuff, but
it was a rough year. Yeah, there was a rough
learning year.
It was like I said earlier. Yeah, it was a learning year. You guys had new coordinators. Everything else was going on. But a couple weeks later, you go over to Marshall, right? Like SMSU, and there's a night game, and USF ended up winning the game, but it was just an absolute shootout. I think I looked at Witt at one point in the third quarter, and I said we could possibly break the school record for points in a game and lose the game at some point. What's it like when you get in a game like that, where it's just everything that you probably prepared for ahead of time just got thrown out the window right away?
I mean, I don't want to be the only one to talk, but I tell you what, that game probably solidified my career and who I was as a player. Just because I felt like, I take it personally, but I got exposed on a different level. But there was a lot of things behind the picture that happened. But for me, I felt like I saw myself like, hey, you're not good enough right now. Certain things happened to me in that game. So it made me do different things in my career, I believe. But yeah, that was another rough one, I tell you what. So,
John, was that Anthony Dean, that kind of bigger wideout they had? Because I remember.
It was actually what was his name? Number 11, I believe, or one of the two.
It was number 1.
number one. It wasn't Anthony Dean. Anthony Dean was the taller kid, but it wasn't him.
Yeah,
it was
I remember Anthony. Yeah, Anthony Dean flipped the ball to the ref a few times. I remember that. No, that was 800 yards, obviously, and I've talked with a good friend of mine, the guy that Tremaine Jackson, about that, and he still has that etched in his brain as not one of the better games that he's been a part of. But once again, you guys get on the bus after that game. How was that trip home?
Rough.
Is there much talking, or is it
no
all looking out the window?
A lot of it was a disappointing time, especially defensively, just because we, as a defense, we felt like we let the team down. We had no answers. There was no adjustments and stuff. Seeing the coaching world, I know different things now, but it was just, we felt like we were defeated, and we had no answers. And we just looked around and said, does anybody have the answers? But it was very, very, very tough after that, feeling like it was a defense's fault. For me, I take it personally. I'm a defensive guy, so it was bad.
Brady, what was it like on the offensive end of a shootout like that? I mean, where it's just back and forth, and that you have to score more points than them to win that game.
It was an extremely fun game on the offensive side. You're on the field a ton. You just kept going back and forth. So, anytime you can stay on the field a lot and score a lot, from an offensive standpoint, that's what you're out there to do. I can totally understand where the defense is coming from. But, from an offensive side of the ball, it was fun because you got a lot of opportunities to go score. Thankfully, it went our way at the end.
Yeah.
Josh, let me ask. We're about halfway through that 13 season.
Yeah.
What at that point, what are your thoughts as you're redshirting, watching all this kind of transpire?
Honestly, it kind of was unfolding all together because the injuries were so big that year. Injuries killed us that year, and at any moment the next man could be up. So it was almost like, man, who's gonna be pulled up from the freshman that needs to go up? And none of us eventually got in, so we all got to keep our red shirt. But the fact that so many injuries were happening, it kind of puts a little scare to you, like, man, half of my season could be gone and I could be up next like that. So
right,
it was interesting to watch because of the season before we had done so good, and then coming into my first year, you expect to be at that high level. You expect to be nothing but 9-2, 10-1. You know what I'm saying? That high rankings. So it was hard that first year, and especially being in your freshman year, you don't get a lot of credit. You go through a lot of difficult times, especially being away from home. So everything starts to add up, and then on top of that, being almost 500 in the season, that kind of could tip it over for some people. But if you hung in there, the results were even better.
Sure. A few weeks later, you guys host Augustana the first time Augie comes to the Bob. You guys are obviously at this point fighting to make sure you have a winning season because you guys were probably made aware that there was a little bit of a history behind that. So Augie comes on into the Bob. Augie's not having a real good year themselves offensively. Defensively, they were a pretty solid squad. What do you guys remember of that night game at the Bob?
I always talk to it. But because that was my second time, being able to get to play against them. And every time I played against them, I think I was one of the longest people to play against Augie from the start. Whenever we played them, it didn't matter what our records were. That was a whole different game. It was going to be a battle no matter what. But I specifically remember our side of the ball defense, like we were mad because of what was happening throughout the season. There's a lot of emotions from, not performing to, different things on and off the field. It's like we were just upset, and we knew we had to win that one because that was one of the biggest ones of the year. Our season already wasn't going good, but if we beat Augie, you always have a good chip on your shoulder. It doesn't matter. So
thanks.
Yeah, that was definitely a pride game. Being an out-of-state kid coming to Sioux Falls, I knew nothing about Sioux Falls. that's the first thing you hear about getting recruited to USF is that rivalry between Augustana and USF. So it's embedded into your brain immediately. So when you start to see those guys around, and whether it's at basketball games, baseball games, volleyball games, you just don't like them. I mean, it just kind of happened that way. I mean, that's just how it was kind of brought to you as you were recruited there. I mean, and they're probably great guys, and but you just, because of that rivalry when it came to sports, it was always a kind of a tip. So you just knew that was a pride game. You're going into it no matter what the records were. You knew when you came to Sioux Falls that was a huge game, no matter what the records were, no matter what your season was going to end up at. You needed to win that one. So you had pride for the entire year. You're probably going to hear about it.
Yeah, let me ask. There was a 7,200, fans at the first game at Augustana. Then roughly about 4,800 at the game at the Bob. It didn't seem like the Augustana fans were necessarily make the trip across town for it. Were you guys a little bit let down that there wasn't a little bit more of a boom environment by having that big a crowd to match what happened the year previous?
I mean, I thought it was a big crowd. I used to play in front of hundreds of people, so whenever there's thousands of people, I thought it was a huge crowd for me.
No doubt.
But I mean, yeah, the way I looked at it is, hey, their fans aren't showing up, their fans aren't supporting their team. Well, let's go out and get a win. I mean, that just kind of fueled. That's the way I looked at it, anyways. You look at our stands and we got a packed crowd. That fuels me individually. I mean, to see the support we had from the USF side. So
sure,
we had to go win the game no matter what. I don't care if there was one person there. I'm million people there. We're gonna go. So.
And you guys have found out, since those years, all the former players usually come back for the Augie game too. And so, if you guys come back, you see them all out at the tailgate party, and then they're up there in the crowd during the game, and it's kind of a cool, from the USF perspective, it's a pretty cool environment. But obviously, the defense stepped up that game, John. You guys only gave up 10 points against Augustana, so obviously, a much improved performance there.
Mm-hmm.
So then, to finish out, we'll just finish out the season here. We'll talk about one more game, the game where we hosted Mankato. I think this might have been another one of the. John, I hate to bring up all this negative stuff, but I think we're going to build on it as we go on here. But this was kind of a strange game. Mankato came in. You start your season with Duluth, and then you finish at home against Mankato. They kind of had their way with USF in that game. I mean, I don't know what you guys remember about that game.
I remember a butt whooping took place at the Bob. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
That's all it was a butt whooping.
I remember thinking Duluth, that was the real deal team. And then we came and found out Mankato was like the big brother of Duluth. And I was like, okay, well, that's what we need to be like then. They're just, size-wise, speed-wise, the way they played as a team, they were just on a different level than we were at that time. It's pretty straightforward. We were young, we were inexperienced, we were a little immature. And as time went throughout the season, I think we definitely got better. And a lot of that playing time helped us in our last, 2-3 years throwing together that pretty good stretch there. But Mankato was the real deal when they came on the Bob, that was for sure.
So, as Jay Butt had mentioned earlier, there was so many injuries during the season. This game, the Mankato game, Matt Young played most of the game at quarterback. But throughout the rest of the season, Luke had played a little bit. He got hurt. Matt Young was hurt, missed some games. So Carrington Hanna actually played quite a bit at quarterback during that season. Brady, I did want to give you a shout out because you had 11 carries and a touchdown in that Mankato game. I don't know if you remember that.
Things were probably in at that time.
Guys, you probably remember better than we do, but was that the game where John Wolf decided to get a little bit of air and ended up jumping over a cornerback?
Yeah, over Solomon. It wasn't me.
we wanted to make sure you had a chance to clear that up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Solomon. It wasn't me. Okay. No,
So-
he knows it.
So you bring up Solomon. So Solomon and you were both sophomores that season, right,
Yep.
John?
Yeah, we were.
And then who else was playing with you in the defensive backfield in that 2013 season?
Ooh, 13. Was that I played with so many different safeties.
That was Brogan and
it was Graber, Joel Martins.
It was Brogan.
The other corners. Was
Campbell back there?
Yep,
Yeah,
Thad Campbell was there.
Thad and Brogan.
And I think Brogan, I don't think was there, was he? I think Robert Virgil.
It was Brogan. Nah, Virgil wasn't there.
Was he gone?
Yeah, Virgil was gone. It was Brogan.
So Brogan did 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many guys.
It was kind of a mix of young and old, and some of the guys were around for a while. Who are some of the other? I don't know. I hate to put you on the spot here. Do you remember any of the other defensive players from that season? Whit, you might have a memory of some of those guys too.
Well, Campbell's who came to mind right off the bat there. Outside of that, gosh, that's going back a little ways. I'm drawing a blank as to who else was there then.
Was Grant Schindler on that squad?
Yeah. Yep.
Sheesh.
See if we can have some more guys.
Guys like Clint Wilson and
Clint Carter.
Those guys were just getting going, weren't they?
Yeah, I know Cam. He played a little bit. He was playing the rush at the time. We had a whole different formation and stuff, but
yeah. Jared Grabb and a few others, but yeah.
Yeah, Flesher.
Yeah.
Everything runs together. I'm like,
yeah, absolutely. No, I totally get you. Well, you guys end up finishing the season, 6-5, and ends up being a bit of a transition year. Obviously, you put another check mark in winning seasons, which ended up kind of being the goal in the back half of the year at that point. Then there ends up being, a change where Robert Tucker goes elsewhere. Tremaine Jackson moves up to be in the DC. As you guys now move into a 14 season with a healthy Luke Papillion, what was kind of the outlook at that point when you guys are, a season more, seasoned, frankly, and, Luke's healthy and Tremaine comes in probably with a little bit of fire, in his 212 defense. What can you guys tell us about that? Butler, what do you recall of having Tremaine kind of talk to you guys for the first time or so about kind of how things are going to be?
Honestly, it started off really with Tidwell. Tidwell's the one who kept us all together, believe it or not. But my man really watched over all of us because we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what was going to happen. But all we knew is that the DBs were going to stick together and the defense was going to stick together. And then everybody in the USF team was going to eventually stick together, no matter who was gone, no matter who was coming in. And when that coaching change happened, that really set the tone. Coach Jack did bring that energy and brought that fire, and that changed all around. Our biggest emphasis is we're the same guys, but we're really not the same guys. And that's if you have that mentality, like with having that same people around you, but you're not on that same level, you're at a higher level, and you know what level you want to get to, that can really change the atmosphere of the defense.
Sure. Teddy, what do you remember about that?
Yeah, I mean, so for the first meeting that we had, Coach Jack actually told everybody to get up, like go to the back. And then he said, this first row is for my leaders. And he said, my leaders sit up front. The rest of you guys, you can sit in the rest of the rows. And it was an interesting thing that happened in that time, just because there were some guys that sat in the front that you knew should be there. And then there were some guys that sat in the front that you were necessarily like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you sitting up front? And some guys actually called each other out and was like, no, you need to get up. I'm sitting there. So it kind of made us, butt heads. But then it all perspired, throughout the season, like which guys were actually supposed to sit up front and which guys weren't. So it was an interesting meeting. And Coach Jack, he flat out said, he's like, all that stuff you knew, let it go. He's bringing in something totally different, which was, yes, #212. Shout out Nate Lukes. So,
what did that, by having to move up to the front of the room, did that make yourself and others feel a little bit more accountable as leaders?
Oh yeah. And if you sat in that front of the room, you better sit there and you better do what you need to do, or else there's other people in the front that would have told you to get back. So,
Butler, where were you at in that room? Were you sitting in the back, Butler?
I was in the midsection. I was a redshirt. Yeah, I was a freshman. So, I tried to lead when I could and when they asked me to, but had a lot of guys in front of me that were teaching me the way. So,
Yeah, I get you. So you guys go into that year, you win your first few games. Week 3, you guys play I think they're like ranked 17th in the country. St. Cloud State comes on in, and you guys weren't ranked at the time, if I remember that. And you guys kind of dump truck them 36-0. And it was one of those where it was never close. They couldn't mount much offense. They certainly couldn't pass the football. I remember that. And so you guys were able to kind of go downhill on them. What do you guys recall? Because that was kind of a prove-it game against a ranked team. Brady, what do you recall in that game?
I remember just after that first season, that 6-5 season, like the growth period was over. Like now it's time. Like there's no more excuses. There's no more. Oh, this is a young team, and our coaching staff did a good job. It's pretty much saying that. Like, all right, just because we had a little bump in the road last year, that doesn't mean we're going to continue that. Like we're going to win every single game. That was the mentality, and we truly believed that. Just going back, I was thinking about Coach Jack. He's one of the first defensive coaches I've ever actually taken my headphones off pregame and actually listened to his speech on the other side of the locker room, because I'm like, I gotta listen to this guy, and he would just go crazy. And I mean, he'd get offensive guys jacked up. So yeah, he did a great job, I thought, with the defense. But just going into that season, I mean, the growing pains were over. It was like you're either gonna step up or someone else is gonna take your spot. And again, I think the coaches did a good job throughout the offseason, pretty much preparing everybody, not just the starters that year, but making sure, because we obviously went through injuries the year prior, making sure that your backups and their backups were all ready and just as good to take a spot if you had to go out or if you weren't playing up to that level. So it was just cool to see. I mean, offense and defense, we went at it every single day in the offseason, and like a healthy, you might get upset with somebody during practice, but then afterwards you'd hug it out and be totally cool. And I was never on a team like that, especially in high school, but coming to college, that family atmosphere, I think definitely drove a ton of success, offense and defense.
Brady, was that when you were making that transition also from being a conventional halfback to more of that kind of hybrid spot that Carrington had done a little bit?
Yep, when Carrington graduated, I went like full time into that H-back position, what we called it, and I was no longer like a true running back.
How comfortable were you with that change? Had you caught a lot of footballs in high school, or was that a bit of a transition in itself?
I loved it, to be honest. I think it fit me well for what we did in our offense, especially kind of a run and gun type of offense. We needed more of a scat back, which we had Nephi and Max. Those guys were awesome, Justin Folks. So for the offense we ran, and I think it fit my position pretty well. In high school, when coming from a small town, you'd have to throw it, catch it, run it, punt it. Rather just get someone to look at you from a college standpoint.
You'd rather catch balls down the field and run over safeties. I understand. Yeah. I get you. Okay. What on the defensive side? What do you guys remember? As that season began, and you guys having a goose egg against St. Cloud.
I remember it was a whole new philosophy. The first thing that Coach Jackson wanted to do was stop the run. Stop the run, you have fun. And that's what we did that game. And I think it built confidence in us after we put a goose egg and allowed very minimal rushing yards too for a rushing team. And after that, we found out, hey, we are actually real. We can play with dudes in this league, so.
Sure.
So it seemed like the defensive stat numbers significantly improved in that 2014 season as well. John, you had I think 4 interceptions that season, and Solomon on the other side ended up with 10, and he returned 2 of them for touchdowns, and I think he probably could have had a couple more, but he celebrated a little bit too early.
Oh yeah.
But what was that mainly due to just the change in philosophy and you guys just playing more loose and just attacking a little bit more, or what was the major difference there?
The biggest thing was probably the schematics of things. We were able, it's the easiest defense to play in. And when you have something that's easy, it allows you to play fast and use your abilities. And that's what Coach Jackson preached. He said, if you can count to 3, you can play for me. So, if you bought into that, it was that simple. We were able to, it was a simple scheme. everything was simplistic so we can play fast and use our abilities. That's why we were recruited to be able to go and do that. So with all the different stat changes, I mean, like Butler referred to, we were the exact same team, literally minus maybe a couple guys. We were the same personnel from the year before. And all we did was conformed our minds and had a little bit different scheme to make us, play fast. And it was a world of a difference.
So
John,
I'll mention this as well. Yeah, I wanted to mention one more thing. John, you also returned punts that season, and you showed yourself to be a pretty dynamic playmaker as a punt returner as well. You returned 2 for touchdowns. Was that something that was fun for you, or just something where you decided, hey, I'll do this if no one else will, or what was the philosophy
there? I always did it, but the coaches would never let me. I was always mad, They never gave me the shot to, and I was like, hey, I mean, I can do it. I did it in high school. I mean, they saw my tape and everything, and I love doing it. I love that, the fear of someone coming down, maybe smacking me. It was all fun to me. So, I mean, Butler, I did it to their team. I scored a couple on them too. So, but back in the day. But it was, they let me finally do it, and I was like, finally. And when I got the shot, I mean, took advantage of it. Of course, then I got hurt doing it one time against Duluth, so I never got to do it again. Yeah, Coach Jackson, he was like, nope, no more of that. So I was like, all right.
Every once in a while, Chad and I will interject a story or two from our travels, with football and everything. And I remember Coach Jackson before the season, he and I had lunch at Five Guys, which I'm sure is shocking to everyone, 2 fat guys eating double cheeseburgers. But I remember asking him what his philosophy was going to be defensively, and he said, he said, I want them to not be thinking. He said, I want them playing fast, and we're going to keep it real simple. He said, we're going to shut down the run first, and then he said, we're going to come after them. And it was interesting to hear him say that, because sometimes coaches say stuff like that, and then what you see in gameplay doesn't really match up with that. But that's exactly what you were seeing with your squad, with him as the DC.
Yeah. And the funny thing is,
oh, go ahead.
The funny thing is, though, back then, he said we stopped the run and then we could send pressure and all that. It was funny. We were the type of guys, though, that we didn't really send pressure. We just wanted to play in our base calls all the time. So he always wanted to send pressure, but we were like, nah, let's just play our base stuff because it's working. So we always talk about that nowadays. He was like, man, I could never send any pressure because you guys just wanted to play base coverage. And I was like, I mean, it worked, so it's all right.
So a couple weeks later, you guys go over to Augustana and, kind of have another dominant defensive performance against them. Final score of 23-12. I don't know what you remember offensively from that game, Brady. Luke had 130 yards rushing, and Nephi had a 45-yard touchdown run. Tremendous downfield blocking is what the stat here says. What do you remember from that, Brady?
I remember playing at Augustana was always fun. I actually really liked their facilities, and I liked their stadium. So it was a fun time to play at Augustana. And you mentioned it before. Anytime we played Augustana, that rivalry, you always had the past players come back, and that was a really cool tradition. I mean, they would either be in the end zone, or if we were at USF, they would always be in one area, and you'd look up there, and they'd all be hooting and hollering. I mean, that was special to get to play in front of them and just see how excited they are. Kind of like how we act now when we get to watch a USF Augustana game. There's a lot of pride involved. So I remember getting the win, and that's about it. So I don't care who had the stats. We got the win. I was happy about it.
What on the defensive side, I recall Augustana had they were trying to beat you guys down the field, and you guys were winning that matchup all day long at the corners. I remember very well. How do you guys recall that game, whether it's Josh or John?
I'll let Butler go first.
Special teams wise, that's what I played a lot of that year. But special teams wise, it It was a battle of field position, for real. It was a battle of the field position, and we dominated that year by field position, which gave us an opportunity on defense to stop them a lot of the times. They really try to come heavy with us. I think, was that the first year, what's his name played? What was that quarterback's name?
That was Trey second year.
That was the second year he played?
Yeah, his first year he didn't do a whole lot, but he was really coming on that year.
Yeah, so we was really watching him that year, and we was able to contain him and shut him down that year. And they was real young that year, I remember too. So that was a big edge for us. So we came out with the fire and intensity, and there was no competition the whole game. Really, it felt like just from the jump of it.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I remember going into that week specifically. Trey High was having his upcoming year and all that stuff, and all the receivers were having crazy numbers. They're torching defenses and all that stuff. So as the defensive back crew, I mean, we took it as a challenge. We said, these guys are doing all this to these other teams, but they haven't played us yet. So that's a whole different thing. So we took it as a challenge, and I mean, we studied film the whole week. We knew what they were trying to do, which was, throw the ball down the field and hope to get one of them landed. So we watched that throughout the week, and I mean, when it came down to it, we executed at that time. So
you guys win that game, then a few weeks later, you're making a trip to Winona. You guys are unbeaten, making a trip to Maxwell there, and always a real hype place to play, whether it's at the walk-in where you got to go through the people or all that fun stuff. Their fans are always got a little energy too, and so you guys are going into that game. They're powerful offense. They had Josh Mikes, the receiver, who's a pretty good player, real athletic wideout, had a huge upside, and they had Jack Nelson, quarterback, who can really sling it. You guys end up kind of rolling over them though, 41-28. First time USF beats Winona State. Brady, what do you recall of that football game?
I think that was one of those games where we just kept the momentum rolling, honestly. That season was just, like I said, our growing pains were over. We were just – every game we continued to grow as a team, but you could just tell each individual was just getting better and better and better. That's because we were going against one of the best defenses every day in practice. And I'm not just saying that because these two guys are on here, but we would literally, go at it every single day in practice. And we knew we were going against one of the best defenses in our entire conference. So when it came game day, it was easier. I mean, game day was easy. Practice was the tough part because you had to go against Jay Butt and Tidwell and Solomon and all those other guys on a daily basis. They're the best, secondary in the league. So, when it came game day, I've talked to other guys about this. Game day was easy. It was. I hate to say it's easy, but it was. I mean, when you had to go get one-on-one against somebody, it wasn't like you were going one-on-one against the guy in practice because the guy in practice was better than the people we were going against on game day. But it was a momentum thing. This team, you could just tell, was like a train. The more momentum, the more confidence it built, the better we got every single week, and that's how it felt.
John, what do you guys recall on the defensive side of the ball? I remember Winona made a little bit of a run in that game. Did you guys have a concern that you guys weren't going to be able to kind of keep it together? But you guys, in the end, you guys were able to prevail 41-28.
Yeah, like you said, so we were on top of them for a bit, and then we kind of got laxical, I think, and we were like, we got this one, and then they started creeping up, and that's when Coach Jackson, he switched the gears on us again and said, "What are you guys doing?" Different words were said, but he made us, focus back in and say, "Hey, we need to get this thing rolling again because we need to get out of here with a win and don't just, be complacent with winning the game. Go and, shut them out." So I remember that, the momentum, like Brady said, it just keep carry. We got, things rolling in that game, and they just kept going after that once we, shut it down again and said, all right, it's time to quit playing around. So
Sure.
Well, the following week, you have to go over to Mankato to play. And so it's two undefeated teams going at it. November 1st, it's getting a little chilly. I remember driving over there, I was bundled up, pull up to the tailgate, and USF had a huge tailgate crowd there. And then go into the game, and the USF side was completely almost, full.
Yeah.
Huge crowd. for that battle of the undefeateds going on there. USF, you guys were up I think it was 14-10 at the end of the third quarter. And I don't know if you guys could hear it, but the crowd had that USF chant going up there, and Mankato was like, "What's going on? They're going to come in here and beat us on our home field." And then the fourth quarter ended up not going our way, but that was kind of a crazy game. I don't know what you guys remember from that game, but it was pretty insane. John, I'll let you start.
Oh yeah, I mean that was probably one of the the tough game because we lost, but I mean the atmosphere was amazing. Two unbeaten top-ranked teams going at it. That's what you live for, like in football, playing against the best. And I mean, special teams wise, we could have done a little bit better. I mean, I take it to heart. I'm like, dang it, special teams, we could have won the game, but hey, it is what it is. I just feel like, we were really focused that whole week of practice. I remember that specifically. We knew what was on the line and what we were playing for, and that was the conference championship at the time. If we would have won that, but it was fun, but unfortunately we came out underneath. So
yeah. Brady, what do you recall? Yeah, on the offense.
I think that was kind of like a footprint game. I mean, to be honest, Mankato probably didn't take us serious up until that point. Is kind of what I felt. Maybe the crowd didn't. Their fans thought the same thing, but I think coming out of that game, even though obviously didn't go our way and we did lose, it was one of those games where people around the conference, even Mankato themselves, looked at USF like a real contender at that point and like, oh my gosh, these guys are legit. So that's what, like I said, we were a momentum team when we were up 14-10. Yeah, I'm reading the bottom.
Tim Hyatt's chiming in here and asking if Nephi really did step out of bounds.
Nah.
You guys remember that on the first drive?
Oh yeah.
They had that grass field too, so it was always a little tough, whether the paint was moving that day or the grass was laying. So I'd say out, but
And if I'm not mistaken, Nephi was kind of nursing a leg injury or something, and I don't think he played a ton after that. It was kind of like he got used up on a play where it didn't even count, so it was kind of too bad. But well, you guys obviously. That wasn't what how you guys wanted that game to turn on out. That was the last season where there was only 6 teams for the region that were going to make the playoffs. Harding of all teams made it ahead of you guys by what was said to be percentage points. Certainly, I remember all across the D2 landscape, people were like, "Wow, this is too good a football team not to be in the playoffs." Considering, you guys are a squad that ended up being ahead of Mankato after 3 quarters, and they end up going all the way to the national championship game that year. So you end up getting a bit of a consolation prize going to Excelsior Springs to play against Central Oklahoma. What was that whole process like? I mean, other than getting more time of practice, which may or may not have been terribly welcome. What were the thoughts on that whole deal?
I wouldn't call it a consolation prize. Game. That's just my opinion, but we won another game. I mean, another opportunity to play as an athlete. That's what you always hope and wish for. Obviously, another game. So come out there with another win. It was fun. It was fun to obviously continue to practice with your teammates and go on another road trip. And it was kind of more relaxed, I would say, because you knew it was your last game and the road trip was fun, the hotel, the dinners and all that. That's a good time. There are always memories you're going to have. But it really sucks if you went down there and lost. That's for sure.
Well, you guys brought good energy to the game. I remember you guys were on them right away. I remember Tidwell with a punt return down the sideline, and Nephi throws a long touchdown pass to Angulo, and you guys are off to the races. They had some good running backs and a quarterback who could run a little bit, and you guys weren't having any of it. I remember that pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us, I think, we took it as a punch in the face, not making the playoffs. A lot of us were really angry, especially, I mean, how well we did, and, we were healthy as can be. That was the most healthy team I think I've ever been a part of at USF, and the momentum that we had. So I feel like we just got snubbed, and we had something to prove and said, hey, this is what you get for leaving us out. And unfortunately, UCO had to feel the wrath of it, but, I mean, somebody had to. So,
Yeah.
Whit and I talked a little bit earlier too, and it's also kind of neat when you can play in the postseason and get a win for your last game too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you make it to that postseason, only one team gets that last win, and this one, going into that next season, hopefully that built a little bit of momentum and trust, amongst your teammates and everything. So then the next season, let's talk about that. Let's chime in there. Start off strong, obviously, and then week 3, Duluth, who a couple years before had kind of taken it to you guys, has to come to Sioux Falls. And you guys kind of put the hurting on them in that week 3 of the 2015 season. I don't know if you remember a whole lot about that game. Josh Butler, what do you remember about that Duluth game?
Yeah, that was actually my first season starting. That was a fun season. That Duluth game was crazy though, because we were up by a lot, and then I think Tidwell went down, D. Clark went down, somebody else went down, but a lot of guys had to step up that game, and they started making a comeback. And Cliff made a crazy deflection. Shout out Cliff at the end.
Yeah,
and bro, that was one of the craziest, funnest games experienced in my life. Especially the atmosphere, Duluth coming in our territory, just going and facing everybody, man. And nobody knew what we had that year. Nobody knew where we was going that year, especially coming off the season, and we're losing so many people that year. So Duluth was really our first big test, and a challenge it was, but it was very exciting and very fun.
I remember that being an extremely physical football game. John, obviously you were having to come up and, make plays in the running game as well. And because that was a good running football team. What do you, I think you hurt a shoulder in that game. Is that right? Or
actually my hip, I got a hip pointer in that game.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was tough when I got hurt, but it honestly worked out for the best. I got to sit back and, watch and see things from a different perspective and see that I can actually lead from not being out there. And for Cliff Redmond, shout out again, that dude stepped up huge, and like a number of guys did throughout the year when people got hurt. But it was just awesome to see that if someone did go down, we had guys who have learned and been through the process to be able to come in and step in. But it was an amazing game. We got that win. It was so awesome. It really gave us, confidence moving throughout that season as well as we faced other adversity. But
Brady, how did you guys see that? Did you guys kind of see that as a notch in your belt type win, especially after that trip up to Duluth?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when you think of the NSIC, you think of the powerhouses. Coming into it, we always heard of Duluth, you always heard of Mankato and Monona. And knowing we only had this opportunity, unless we were in the playoffs at some point, to potentially ever play them again at our home field, that was something I took personally, because it's like, all right, we got one shot to beat these guys. We might not ever see them again. We want to make sure, like you said, to get that notch on your belt that, yeah, you could say you beat them. That was an extremely memorable game in my eyes, just because it was extremely exciting. Kind of came down. We had to get a first. I remember for myself, anyways, Luke threw a ball over the middle. I caught it and landed on some guy's leg, and that just stuck out in my mind, anyways, for one of the most memorable catches I think I had in my career, just to get a first. And Josh, got the first down after that to steal the game. So it was a cool series of events that happened there. And yeah, just to get that win and be able to say beat Duluth in Division II, was pretty special. It would have really sucked if you lost in 4 years and you say you went 11-1 and 10-2, but never got a chance to beat them. That would have sucked.
Birger, do you remember you and I were out at the tailgate, or at least that's how my memory serves me best. And I remember you came walking over and said, "Whit, somebody wants to talk to you." And there was a lot of Duluth fans there. And I remember Bo Bofferding, one of their guys, his dad was there, and a bunch of the parent group was there, and Drew Bauer's father was there. And he had a few cocktails by that point. And he decided to tell me a little bit of his thoughts about me picking them to lose 2 games that season, including this game that we're talking about. And then he proceeded to show me his cell phone and said, "Let me tell you what my son thinks of you." And he showed me some text messages where his son didn't think that Witt guy was such a good fella. And I remember after the game, I went and walked over, and he was in the middle of the field, and I was going to go and see if he wanted to have some small talk, and he just kind of kept going towards the goalposts. So I was okay with the outcome, all things considered.
Yeah, I remember that pretty clearly because I always get there, 3.5 hours before kickoff. And of course, everyone's like, "Hey, where's Witt at? Where's Witt? Is he coming to the tailgate?" Because if he picks the other team or whatever, then I got to hear about it. And I'm just like, "Hey, I'll let you know when he gets here. I'll bring him over." And yeah, that was
Birger likes to get me in trouble, is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
And I know when I haven't picked USF that goes up on the board too. So it's not trying to be blind to that. I'm not that stupid. Okay. So Birger, next game we're going to talk about Augustana. What is it? Week 8. USF. I got another response.
Well, I was going to say USF kind of rolled through most of the other games that season. And so if you guys have any stories that you remember, I mean, obviously feel free to share, but yeah, the next memorable game on that was, the Augie game, just because, year in, year out, we talked about that for the last couple seasons here. It's always a big game. And this one was a little bit different. It was at Sioux Falls again. And I'll let Witt kind of set it up here.
Well, I mean, you guys recall you're coming into that game, 7-0? You guys get up 14-0 before fans are even comfortable in their seats. And Brady, I think you scored one of those touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. And then all of a sudden, the offensive approach probably gets a little more conservative than, I mean, if I were to ask Dusty right now, he'd probably say, yeah, we probably got a little conservative. But at the same time, Augie started doing some things offensively. C.J. Ham started getting some yards. What do you guys recall from that game? Brady, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, from an offensive standpoint, Dusty coaches my brother, so I can't say anything bad about him.
We'll get to that whole thing later, but yeah, keep going.
He watches every one of these too, by the way.
No, I think from an offensive standpoint, we probably got a little lax, to be honest with you. I mean, the play call is the play call. We should be able to execute whether it's a run 5 plays in a row or if it's a pass 5 plays in a row. It shouldn't matter. With how talented our offense was, we should have been able to move the ball no matter what. We probably got a little lax, and we were bound to do that from time to time. Our offense, we felt we were pretty good, and I think we knew we were pretty good. We'd get up, and then we'd go 3 and out, a couple times in a row, and we just kind of look at each other. We knew what we were doing, but, I'd look at Luke, and I'd look at Terry or Trevor Westcott, and we'd be like, all right, let's go, guys. Let's pick it back up. So I think we were at fault for that at times, and that hurt us, obviously, down the stretch. We didn't score when we needed to, and that was a tough one to swallow, that's for sure.
Okay, Tidwell, this is the part where you talk about the defensive side.
I mean, I'll tell you what, that was a tough one. Defensively, I felt like we did what we could, honestly. We had there was multiple takeaways. We scored twice, I think.
Yeah. Solomon had a pick 6 that game.
Solo and Drew had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was frustrating, but that's how football works. You got 3 sides of the ball, in special teams. But I mean, when it came down to it, we didn't make the play at the end to stop CJ from scoring when he had that long touchdown run. I still envision him running, and I'm the last guy to hit him when he's rolling into the freaking end zone. So that was tough. That was the last score they did, and they won the game. But looking back, I was the first part of the first class to lose to Augie, so that sucked too. But hey, it happens.
Josh, what were your recollections of that game in the second half and kind of how things went down?
Yeah, that was very tough loss. It being Augie, it's just Augie. You can't say nothing about it other than losing to Augie is the worst thing that happened that season, probably, other than the playoff game. But When you lose against your rival team, when we used to lose against Rangeview, that used to hurt. So I know it hurts when we lost against Augie. So going into that game, it was a very serious game. We knew what the stakes were, just because we didn't want to put anything at risk. With the playoffs for last year, knowing we didn't make it, we knew everything was at risk. Every game was on the line. So we honestly played like it was our last game, every game, and that one just kind of slipped away from us. It's not too many games where, as a defense, you can have that many turnovers and it just don't go your way. But that's just the collective. We didn't finish at the end. That just comes down on us. So it was a fun game, but it hurt. It hurt. It definitely did hurt. So
yeah, from an offensive standpoint, we should have never put our defense in that position. I mean, realistically, for how good of a game they had, the offense kind of laid an egg. I mean, overall, from what we've done that whole season and what we did that whole season, from an offensive standpoint, that was one we didn't show up to our best, from my perspective, anyways. I mean, the numbers probably show it too.
Sure. The following week after that, you didn't have a hangover. I mean, you went up to St. Paul and thumped Concordia 49-0, which that's always a good win. But then the week after that, Mankato is coming to Sioux Falls, and so you guys had played with them the year before, up at the end of the third quarter, and only had one loss on the season, and then I don't know, it was just things got rolling downhill, and it didn't turn out very well for the Cougars. I hate this because I feel like I'm just talking about negative stuff, you guys. So I
gave Birger all the intros for the bad games.
Yeah, he did. He's like, all the bad games, Birger gets. Yeah.
I remember there was a lot of hype to that game, but there wasn't a lot of hype by halftime. Yeah.
Most definitely. I would probably say that was definitely the most hype game. And the fact that it was going on ESPN kind of made it a little bit for us. We never had a game on ESPN before, and so that was big stakes right there. And we kind of laid an egg. It happens. Can't do nothing about it. But looking at that game, every time I honestly look back at that game, it's like, where did we go wrong? And you just kind of see things just one little pile up, one pile up here, and everything just started combining all together, tumbling down. So you kind of figure like, where did things go wrong? But as the game goes along, just builds up and can't do nothing about it.
Let me ask you guys, I realize that you guys are not trying to be excuse makers or anything like that. I recall fairly well that by that time in the season, you guys had a lot of injuries and just a lot of guys trying to play through it, but nowhere near 100%. And it just started to feel to me like this was kind of the season of what if, and it was starting to kind of slip away. At that point, looking back at it, you guys kind of think that that's the direction things were heading just because of injuries and the loss to the Augie game and kind of how some of the air might have come out of the balloon at that time and everything else?
I mean, you put it in a good perspective. There was a lot of injuries. It's funny, my age, my class, we always joke about Cameron Ostrom, who was the same linebacker at the time during that season. And when he got hurt, we were like, our whole season screwed up because of you, Cam. So we always make a joke, but there was a lot of us that were all beat up. But I mean, for us, we knew that. I mean, it didn't matter. Like, the other team was still going to show up on Saturday, so we had to play. So we were going to do whatever we needed to do. If that was playing different positions or learning something new, we were going to do it. And we didn't make an excuse, and we just went out and we played football. We knew that they were going to show up, so we had to.
Sure. Brady, what do you recall about the offensive side? What you guys kind of struggled to both run it and pass it. It seemed like Mankato was just coming at you up front big time.
They were dialed in. They had a pretty good game plan on us. Honestly, I felt like we just could not get any momentum rolling. And again, I really felt like our offense was a momentum type of offense. When we were rolling, things were good. When we weren't, like I said, we go 3 and out, and we would just like look at each other like, all right, we got to pick it back up in a sense. But they had a good game plan, I thought. And yeah, injuries played obviously a factor. But all great teams, I should say, figure out a way to get around that. That was never one of our excuses, but let's be real, it does play an impact in a season when some of your main players go down and go out. I wouldn't say it deflated us, but it definitely hurts. You see one of your starters or one of your main defensive players or offensive players go out. It's kind of shocking in a sense, and it does stink. But we just couldn't get things rolling, like we did the year before that Mankato.
Sure.
And I don't know if that was a game plan thing, that was a scheme thing. I don't know if Mankato. I mean, Mankato was a good football team. I mean, they were coached well, and they were always big and they were always fast. It was never easy to block anyone on Mankato. I'll say that. And I had to do a lot of blocking against Mankato.
I don't think anybody thought that they were 41 points better than you guys, but so you guys end up getting into playoffs with 2 losses. Then you get to think about the fun experience of waiting at the airport to fly out to Henderson State. First off, did any of you guys know anything about Henderson State? Had you even heard of them before that whole thing went down?
No.
Okay.
First time I heard of them was when we flipped the film on.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, okay, their colors are red and white. Cool." And that's about all I know.
They said it was in Arkadelphia. I said, "What?"
So you guys, and at the same time when you're waiting for your flight, I recall, I think it was Jeff Turn on local ESPN radio had rumored that Judd Stugart was going to USD. That whole thing was going down while you guys were in the airport, ready to head on out. Do you recall, had that word buzzed a little bit on Twitter or anything like that for you guys? Or was that not even a thing? Or what do you guys recall between that whole rumor and then your trip and being delayed?
I think we all knew about it. I mean, let's be real. we all knew about it. One spreads like wildfire. You hear someone say it, then the other person say it, then you see this little news blog on this, and I mean, it's going to spread. But I wouldn't say that. I would hate to say that factored into a loss or a win. We still got to go out and play the game, no matter who our coaches are, in a sense. And I think this team, even these guys would probably say the same thing. No matter who our coaches were, we were a legit family, and our coaches did a great job of making it a family atmosphere. Don't get me wrong, but the players stuck together during the hard times and the workouts and the wins, the losses. I mean, I've never been in a part of a team that the offense and defense are that close ever.
Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing was that was just nothing more than a rumor anyway, and Jed never met with them or whatever. So, but anyway, so you guys are hanging out in the airport. Are you guys sitting there going, "When's this ever going to end? Are we going to get down there in time?" I mean, what's going through your minds?
Yeah, I mean, I know. I remember I was sitting there like, "Yo, what the heck are we doing? Like, are we ever going to leave?" There was the question on where they postponed the game. All these different questions. I've talked to Coach Stug later down the road, and there was chances of trying to get it postponed. There were some rules that were put into place on, hey, if some weather conditions may arise, like this and that. But I mean, it never did. It was, we never make excuses, but it was tough to be able to get to Arkadelphia that late at night, go to sleep and wake up that early and go play a football game like that. It took a toll on us, whether you say it did or not. But I mean, it was tough. I mean, it was fun. I look back now, it was an awesome time. Every time we got to travel somewhere together as a team, we loved it. We had a great time on road games. That was the best part. But I mean, it sucked. But
Brady, you ended up getting dinged up early in that game, didn't you?
Yeah, I pretty much got knocked out.
Okay.
There's first series of the game, first catch of the game was what I remember of it. It was like a 12-yard hook, turned around and just kind of I thought I was going down, but I was probably being dumb and trying to run somebody over at that point. And I got hit 3 different ways, and I was pinballed my head. I hit the ground, and I can remember to this day, Derek Delaney was the lineman at that time, one of my good buddies, picks me up and says, "Hey, nice catch." And I just said, "Hey, I got to get off the field right now because I have no idea where I'm at." So then they did all the tests on the sideline. It started coming back to me on the sideline, but I knew that. Thing is, with me, I knew the questions Sam, our trainer, was going to ask. She's going to ask, what time is it? What did we eat for the pregame meal? What's the score? So I was going around like asking Luke, and I was asking teammates like, all right, I need to know these answers. I couldn't remember them, so that was it. They sent me to the locker room, and I was in sweats and sweatshirt by like halfway through the first quarter.
I was gonna say you were dinged up. Max got dinged up that game. It just seemed like there was a lot of things going against you guys there between the injuries you already had coming into that game, the whole situation with the flight. You guys get late in that football game, and you're still in that game, and you have a chance to win it. And last play offensively, Luke throws one kind of across his body. It just hangs up a little bit before it got to Angulo, and they get it. You guys, I mean, what are your thoughts, kind of afterwards, after that game and after that season? Did it feel kind of like a season of that should have been better than it was?
Yeah, there was a specific time in that playoff game that I remember. So we were fourth quarter, and there was 2 minutes and 12 seconds left on the clock, and we had called a timeout. And if you guys know, our defense that year was the 212. And for some reason, I looked at the clock and it said 212. And I don't know. It was just the craziest thing that happened, seeing that time and stuff. Hashtag 212 Nate Luke. But at that moment, I was just like, we have to win this game. For some reason, inside of me, I felt like there was a reason why it was a timeout. There was a 212. So, I called it out. Unfortunately, we did lose. But it was just like, I was so proud of that year just because of what we had went through, the adversity and everything. We overcame that, still made it to the playoffs, and showed that we still belong there. Even though we may have lost, we out of that season.
Gotcha. And John, so that was basically your last game then as a Cougar, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way,
and I thought that was going to be my last game.
Now, I was supposed to ask you, is it true that Solomon got all the interceptions because they didn't want to throw on the other corner? Is that right?
I don't know about that. I never take that credit. Quarterbacks are just not smart. That's all. Quarterbacks aren't smart.
Chad, you take it.
I'll just say, so obviously you guys had come a long way in this Division II journey. The last show we talked about, the 2011 season was just John, you were there for that year.
Yeah.
It was such a weird season. And then 2012 comes in and USF has a good season, whatever else, and doesn't make the playoffs, doesn't even make that Mineral Water Bowl that 2012 season. 2013, down year, kind of an in-between year. And then 2014, you get left out of the playoffs again. So this was finally the year where, the Cougars were able to break through and make it to that playoff. And actually, since that time, USF's made it to playoffs 3 additional times. And so it kind of started something, a tradition of making it to that next level and, taking USF from where they started and where you left. That was kind of a pretty big accomplishment for you. And John, you were a huge part of that. And so wanted to make sure I mentioned that to you. One of the guys that, took the reins and took USF to that next level. So, do you have any, obviously you went on and, played a little bit after USF, but what were some of your favorite memories from your USF career?
For me, it was definitely the first Augie game that I got to play in. My first, when I actually played, that was just, the atmosphere was unreal. That was my first full college football game that I felt, that I was a part of. I remember breaking up a pass in the end zone from their quarterback that kind of sealed the deal. So it was kind of a big deal for me. But then also just like the feel of the family of USF. Like I could never, there's dudes I could not talk to for 10,000 years and I can call them tomorrow. And then it's just like it never, we never left. Like when I saw these dudes, it's like, it's like I saw them yesterday. So it was just like the family feel of USF is amazing. I love that about it. And that's something that I take, I got it tattooed on my chest, actually, USF. So it's something near and dear to my heart. So.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, so then, we'll talk a little bit about the 2016 season. Because Jay Butt, Brady, you guys were still around during that 16 season. What was it like? You lost a bunch of guys, a bunch of great players from the year before, like John, like Solomon. What was there like oh my gosh, how are we going to replace these guys, or what was the feeling on the defense there, Josh?
It was actually more so the outside that was, portraying that what are they going to do? On the inside, we knew exactly what we had. We knew exactly, who we were bringing in. There was like one or two components maybe that we needed to look into. But for the most part, a lot of the guys that stepped up the year before or that stepped in special teams, we knew they had starting potential, and we knew that what they were going to bring to the table. It was just a matter of time. So that was our biggest asset, knowing what we had and knowing what we were going to do, not worried about what everybody portraying us to be or portraying us to what we think they were going to be.
Yeah. And Brady, offensively, you had almost everyone coming back for that 2016 season. I think you might have lost like one offensive lineman or something like that, or two offensive linemen, but everyone else was pretty much back.
Yeah, we felt pretty good and felt pretty confident. Just going back to the defensive side, what I was thinking about, like, at first you think of, oh, man, we're missing Tiddy, we're missing Solomon, what are we going to do? But those guys did such a good job, honestly, of, like, getting the next wave of guys ready and Jay Butt taking the reins of the leadership position, that there was no, like, stressing or worry about, oh, man, what are we going to do on the defensive side? Because from the outside, it could have looked like, oh, the offense is going to be great, but all the question marks are on the defensive side of the ball because they're, some of the seniors are graduating, obviously, but it never felt like that in-house, like Jay Butt was saying. And I think USF did a great job and still does a great job of recruiting the athletes and growing those athletes that they recruit from at a young age, getting them playing experience, and then trickling in, some of the JUCO guys, the 2-year guys where you need them the most. You're not building an entire team of junior college kids, but you're not building an entire team of just straight freshmen that you're recruiting as well. So I think USF, kudos to the coaching staff, whether you like them or not, they did do a very good job of transitioning a bunch of young athletes, getting them playing experience, and that's why you saw a darn good 3-year run there with junior college guys trickled in there as well. That they played an immense part of it in our success as well, but I think that was a big part of our success.
Yeah. So the 2016 season, one of the early tests for that team was when Bemidji State came in. I think, was it week 3 or week 4?
Week 5.
I don't remember. Was it that late?
We were 5.
Oh, so it was probably October already. Yeah. But that was a game where they just had a really, really solid team that year, and it came down to the end, and they went for 2. Instead of kicking the extra point to tie it. And, defensively, Nate Lukes, of course, says that he made the play, but I think the guy just reached for the pylon and the ball flew out of bounds. But that was kind of what do you guys remember about that game?
Yeah, that game was wild. I actually had to get tested for a concussion that game towards the end of the game. So they didn't let me go back in the whole fourth quarter. So, shout out to Joe. He came in and did his thing. And shout out to Jeff. Jeff really came in and did his thing too. 2 guys that nobody knew about, that stepped up when the time needed. And that's the thing that USF does. They have playmakers that can step up when the time is needed and make the plays that when they're called upon. And even though we ain't do anything to make that play, it was all leading up to it because we were down 20 that game at the beginning of the game, something like that. And going into halftime, we were like, yo, what's going on? We about to get this right. Like, and the crazy, because we was in the locker room, but nobody was really worried. And that was the scariest thing about it. Nobody was screaming at each other. Nobody was yelling at each other. We were like, yeah, we're about to go out there and do this thing. Like, we're about to really go do this. And that's what happened. We came out there. Max got a long run. Delvin got a quick interception, and we was back into it like that. So that's what the thing you got to love about USF. Even though everybody thinks us out and counts us out, we'll never be out.
Josh, in that football game, was it Tahe Nomain? I think it was his name, the kind of muscle-bound running back they had. He took a sweep to the right side, kind of going towards the Cougar bench, probably about USF 30-yard line, and it was you met him out there, and it was like two Rams hitting, and you could hear that hit like echo through the stadium, and he stumbled back a little bit, and I think he saw out of his ear hole after that play, and I mean that had to be one of the most straight up clear collisions you had in your career. What if anything do you recall about the contact that was made there?
My favorite part was after. I always go back and film and look, and Mike Mailing was the only person, not the only person, but Mike Mailing got me hyped any time of the day. You know what I'm saying? Anytime on the field, if Mike Mailing was there, I was getting crazy with him. So just seeing Mike Mailing's reaction afterwards was probably my most priceless for me, because he went up to dude and like looked over dude and said words that I can't say on the camera, but it was just funny to hear him after, and then seeing the whole sidelines reaction on camera. That's my favorite moment. Just going from the 30 all the way down, you can see Brady Rose and Josh Angulo coming off the bench and yelling on the sideline. So that was honestly priceless. I remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean that was a heck of a football game. I mean, you guys, as you mentioned, you guys got down, I want to say 3 touchdowns or so early, and then I remember Max with the long run. Then they had trouble stopping Luke. When Max got hot, they were like, "Oh, we got a key on him," and then Luke was getting them, and Luke had like a 50-yard run, and that was a crazy game. I remember they score with like 2 seconds or 1 second or whatever. They're going to hike the ball. They're letting the clock run. And they're going to hike the ball with the clock running, and then they scored that touchdown. It was like, oh, okay, and now they're going to go for 2. That's pretty ballsy. On your side there, were you like, oh wow, this is really going to happen? We're not doing overtime. We're doing this right now. Were you guys pretty concerned?
I was. I had 100% faith in my defense.
Yeah, they just gave up 36. I can understand.
Yeah. I knew they were gonna ball up when it came to the goal line. I will say though, that defense. I mean, the last 3 years I was there, the defense. I mean, offense usually sits on the sidelines and gets water and goes over plays. Like we would want to be up watching the defense. That's how exciting they were to watch.
Sure.
I mean, everyone saw that probably too, but it was crazy.
Were you, Brady? You're on the sideline at that point. Are you thinking, damn, if they get in here, we just lost this football game. We got nothing we can do about this.
Absolutely, I thought that. Yeah, but to be honest with you, like as good as our defense was, you just had it. There's certain feelings you get throughout the game, and you're just like, I think they're gonna stop them right here. They're just gonna. You just have confidence in them because you see them practice every single day, and we do goal line situations, and you just get that feeling, and you're like, there's no way we're gonna lose this game, and they go for. You see them going for 2. Obviously, there's a little anxiety in your body a little bit, like, okay, offense isn't getting back out on the field. We're not going to get another shot. As an offensive player, you're sitting there going, right now is either we're losing the game or winning the game, and there's nothing as an offensive player you can do about it. But it's pretty cool putting all faith and trust into your defense and knowing we're going to win the game. I mean, that's truly what we thought.
I don't think he was getting in even if he doesn't fumble, but anyway. So, Birger, what do you got for our next game?
I was going to say I did bring up Nate. I hated throwing Nate under the bus there. Nate never did say that. Just wanted to throw that up there, So we did a 2016 season recap with a bunch of the guys a couple weeks ago here, and that was pretty fun. So we went through each game pretty in depth. If you guys want to go back and take a look at that, that was pretty fun with several of the guys from that 2016 season. Josh, I wanted to say real quick, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Tom Frederick, who does the play-by-play for the USF radio broadcast, and Tim Hyatt, they would always refer to you as the smiling assassin out on the field because you always had just a smile on your face, just like you do right now, but you would just, take guys' heads off when you would hit them out there on the field. So
Yeah, they actually told me that one day when I went up to an interview with him. And I was like, really? And so I thought it was real cooler than to come up with that.
you got to trademark that or something. Get a hold of that. So the next week we go over to Augustana. You guys go over to Augustana, and this was kind of fun because Tidwell shows up and he's wearing his USF jersey to the tailgate party. And he's like, hey, someone said someone else was wearing a tailgate or a USF jersey, but it was really tight on him. And he looks around, and it's me. I'm still wearing my own number 67 jersey from the 2001 season. And mine looked a little tighter on my midsection than John's did at that tailgate party. But
that was funny. I remember that.
But yeah, that was a game where, you know, the final ended up being, I mean, it was 35-20, but it never really felt like it was that close. I mean, you guys kind of physically dominated them that game a little bit. I don't know what you remember about that one.
I remember it being a physical game, like always against Augustana, but we wanted our key back. I mean, so that's just going into it. We knew nothing was going to stop us. We had a few slip ups the year before. I think we learned from those, and we grew, we matured, and I mean that's what you're going to get when you're returning that many people to a football team on the offense, defense, and special team side. So I don't think there was any doubt in our mind that, all right, well, yeah, the key's one thing. We're going to get that and put it back in our locker room, but we need to win this game because we need to go win the next game. And obviously the playoffs were our whole mindset that year. So.
Yeah, honestly, that game, I think that solidified us being on our high horse. We were rolling. We were really rolling. And that was the fun part about it, you know, seeing it all build together, seeing us go from game to game and treating each game like it was our last, like we were on a roll. And that's what made being around each other so fun every day, going to practice every day. When you get a season like that, when you get a hot season, when you get a season, undefeated season, when you get a season where you're just winning like that, every day you want to go to practice. Every day you want to have fun. Every day you're ready to get to the next game because you're ready to play the next opponent and be with your brothers. So that was the game where it was like, yeah, we're really the team this year to beat, and we're going to roll through Augustana. And when they took the key last year, we had something to prove with that game. So.
Seemed like Mailing was able to keep up when Trey Hyde was going to go on his runs, and that kind of made things a little bit difficult for them to kind of get. Well, I mean, a lot of times that was kind of free yards, you know, for Augie because he was able to come up with 50, 75 yards a game and end up getting first downs for them just because he could scoot. But I mean, it's hard to understand how quick and how quick to the spot Mailing is unless you really watch him a lot. I mean, how quick he can close.
I can tell you one time, this honestly how fast Mailing is, and it's with Brady Rose. He was one time at practice, he blitzed. He wasn't even supposed to blitz, but he blitzed, and I'm pretty sure they ran a screen, and he still, I think, got a TFL, or it was like a no gain from the blitz, was able to bend the blitz around and go get the screen, tackle the screen, and made a TFL or no gain. And it was like, nah, he just didn't do that. And you could see it just transitioned the game, how fast he was. It was unbelievable how fast that man was.
Yeah. Aaron was the guy you wanted on your team. You love him and hate him, but you wanted him on your team. You probably couldn't talk a ton of sense into the guy, but you loved having him on your team because you would have hated to play against him.
For sure.
I hated practicing against him to do the tackle you in Skelly. But he would. But I love the dude, and I'm so glad he was on our team because that dude, it was impressive for how hard he could hit, how tough he was, and how fast he was. He created a ton of problems for people, and you saw it in that Augustana game.
Brady, let me ask, this 2016 season, you guys went a little bit more run heavy, where Luke wasn't necessarily throwing as many passes. You had Max running for big yards and Luke as well. I mean, either one could go for 100 yards in a football game. How was it being a wideout that year? I mean, you and Angula are hoping to catch 60 balls or something, and you're going to be limited with your chances. Was it just kind of an okay trade-off then because of the fact that you guys were having so much success?
Absolutely, yeah. We were winning, so I mean, of course, me and Josh could have probably went and played somewhere else and had 1,000-yard seasons on lesser teams, but what fun is that? No one's going to remember that. People are going to remember the 11-0 season, 11-1 season, the national, the conference championship, I should say, and making playoff berths. That's what you play the game for. And I think as a receiving crew, probably early on, we were a little, frustrated. Oh, we should get the ball more. Should have had more. We should be throwing more. But that went out the window real quick as we kept racking up wins, and we just kind of took it upon ourselves as a receiving corps that said, all right, well, if we're going to run more, then we're going to be the best blocking receiving core in the conference. And I think that showed. We took pride in blocking because you're on film. You can watch film, and you're that guy that gives up your block and tackles Max, and that could have been the touchdown, and you look bad on film. That's the last thing you want. And so film doesn't lie, so that's the last thing you wanted was to be called out in film, and we took pride in blocking, and I think we did pretty well at it as a receiving core. And then it opened up our pass game too. Since we were so run heavy, it opened up our pass game when we needed it.
I thought that was a very good Cougar offensive line that season.
Yeah.
You had Antonio Green, who's always had a lot of energy and ready to play through the whistle. To the whistle. And then you had, Pipkins. Who are some of the other guys that come to mind for you on that offensive line?
Terry Huber, Trevor Westcott. I'm probably leaving. Nick Stanky was in there at tight end. Clint Sig.
Was Jesse Springer the other tackle?
Springer, that's what I'm missing. Yep.
Don't worry, Springer will give you a hard time after this for him being named after two tight ends. But yeah,
they could all play multiple positions. That's what made it professional. They were beasts. They played well together, and they could play multiple positions, which made them dangerous.
Yeah, and I was going to mention too, you guys were talking about the running game, but Justin Folks also had a really good year that year as well. He had a couple 100-yard games and a couple else that were really close to 100 yards. So he was a dynamic back out of the backfield as well.
After that game, you guys get a chance to make a trip out to Mankato. See, this is how it works. Birger gets to introduce the other Mankato games. I get to get the one you guys win. But you guys go to Mankato, and you got to be thinking to yourself, we got to get this 10-ton gorilla off our back, because you guys had them where you couldn't. It was like they were just on you every year, and you guys always played better at Mankato than you did at the Bob against them for whatever reason. Much more competitive games. So you walk into that one there, and obviously you guys, you kind of have your way with them in a game where you guys are up to 3 scores after 3 quarters. It was a slow going game, but it was kind of like a slow domination by you guys. You get to the quarterback a lot. You guys, run for a lot of yards offensively. Luke has a really memorable run where he kind of takes it in and plays bumper cars with about 4 or 5 guys and gets in for the score. What were your thoughts kind of coming into that game when you guys arrive at Mankato? You walk on the field and if you guys win this, you're going to be conference champs, basically. What's kind of going through your head at that point?
Straight confidence. At that point in the season, from the prior seasons, and then how that season was going, that 2016 season, we were riding high. I think Jay Butt hit it right on the head. We were on our high horse. There was no one knocking us down at that point. We were confident. We've seen everyone we need to see, any team we need to see. It's the only team we haven't beaten yet was Mankato in the NSIC conference over the years. So as an athlete, I know the way I felt about it is, all right, we might not get another chance to play them again. And if we don't ever beat Mankato, that's just going to be a thorn in my side personally. And I know that's how other guys felt. It's going to be a thorn in your side saying, oh, we never beat them. We never beat them. Well, we beat them. So it was good. I think the energy and the confidence would just carried us. We were pretty darn good that year. That's what I felt like anyways.
Josh, how did you guys feel on your side of the ball? Mankato was always a team that's hard to slow down. So, what did you guys think?
The most precise thought I could think of that morning was, honestly, and this is no funny, but I lost to Rangeview. I only played 2 years, I think 1 year, but we lost to Rangeview in high school 4 years in a row by 1 point. 4 years in a row by 1 point. Never beat them. And that's the first thing that popped into my mind. I said, I refuse to have Mankato do the same thing to me that Rangeview got that feeling. So that morning I woke up, I was like, we're not losing Mankato. I kept telling everybody we're not losing this game. I refuse to have let anybody lose this game for us. So we're going to win this game as a team, and coach told us from the jump that, this is our game. And we already knew Mankato was hurting a little that year, so we had to put it on them regardless. We didn't want to keep it close. We didn't want to show no mercy. It was full throttle the whole time, gas on the pedal the whole time, because year after year we were tired of being close. We were tired of losing, and you get to that little bit of freedom. You get that little taste of freedom. You just got to run with it, and that's where we were that year. Every game, like I said, we were playing it like it was our last. Every game was so fun. So when you have that much fun that year, when you have that much fun, you get into that high horse stage, it's hard to knock you down. So,
yeah, I always thought that moment was very similar to the USF in the NAIA days when USF first beat Carroll College, who was kind of the Mankato of the NAIA period for USF. Carroll was just kind of that team that you had to get by. And when USF beat Carroll in the championship in 08, to me, it had a similar feeling. This was a Northern Sun championship, and obviously higher stakes at D2 and a much higher difficulty level as well. And I just remember that was there was a certain feeling, and I remember being up in the booth at Mankato in that stadium, which surprised I made it down from there alive. Jed came running on up after the game and somehow didn't trip on all the concrete that was in that place, and boy, he was just ear to ear, grinning. I think he felt that same confidence that you guys had. Like, I call it a supreme confidence. Like, you have zero apprehension or thought that you're not gonna, that's not gonna, you're not gonna lose. So, but no. So I mean, you guys finish off the regular season undefeated, and then you go into the playoffs. I'll let Chad kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, knocking off Upper Iowa and Wayne to finish that, and I know, a lot of you guys still have that, that picture of y'all sitting in front of the Northern Sun banner after that last regular season game. That's a pretty special deal. But then, the cool thing is being undefeated during the season, you guys get to host a playoff game. So this is, going from the fiasco, the debacle the year before, trying to get to that first round playoff game, and all of a sudden, hey, it's in Sioux Falls, it's at the Bob. That's got to be a pretty cool feeling. And you guys I just remember you were so loose for that game. I remember Max Mickey came out wearing a Christmas sweater underneath his pads in pregame warmups. You guys were like, it's just, just a game, whatever. And Azusa Pacific was coming in from California, and there was snow on the ground. And I thought that was kind of a cool atmosphere. So I'll let you guys tell the story. Brady, what do you remember about that one?
Yeah, I very vividly remember Max Mickey with the Christmas sweater, and that's just the type of athlete he was. He was just kind of a loose guy. When he played loose, he was extremely good, as you guys saw. But our team was just like that. We got more confidence and built our self-esteem up as the year went on, to the point where, like you guys said, we walked out on the field and felt we didn't play well tight anyways, so we just felt, hey, you know what, we're going to go out here, we're going to win this football game too, and we'll go on to the next. That's kind of what, Coach Stugart always says, it's a business trip, whether we're going, home games or away games, but it was. You just go out there, you take care of your business, you beat the guy across from you. Football's a pretty simple game when you think about it. I mean, you get 11 guys that need to beat the other 11 guys, and hopefully you got more points at the end of the game and move on to the next. So I think everyone was just so confident in their abilities at that point, and we were at home. We didn't have to go through a crazy fiasco of traveling and jet lag and no sleep, and had to wake up, got some decent sleep, eat some food, and go play football. So that was pretty special. It was pretty fun.
Josh, what do you recall about Azusa Pacific? I know they had a good running back, and they had a receiver who could go up and get it, and a quarterback who could move a little bit. Is that what you guys saw on film, or what were your kind of concerns coming into that game?
Yeah. First things first, I did not tell Max to wear that sweater. I didn't even know he was wearing that sweater. I just seen he was wearing that sweater when we got to the game. I was his roommate then, and I didn't know he was about to wear that, so that's not on me. But I knew we were going to beat Azusa the night before when they had two players on their team that were friends with two of our players. One of their players texted us and was like, texted one of our players. I think he texted Cliff. It was Cliff's boy. It was like, hey, you got any extra gear? Because it's cold out here. I knew right then it was about to be over for them. They're coming from California, and it was freezing cold outside. They was not ready for what was about to come there. So that was honestly a funny situation. And then another funny situation, we were on the field, and the running back, like you said, he was a good running back. He was actually one of our cornerback Delvin's best friends. So that was actually pretty funny to see on the field arguing and bickering at each other the whole game. So that was very.
Well, that
So,
kind of I'm about to say that kind of leads into the last game that we're going to talk about with Harding, obviously. As we take a look at this game, such a different football game than the other ones you guys have played in because of the fact that they're on a flex bone offense and just such a different squad to have to prepare for. We've kind of heard a little bit of some of the stories of heads cracking and and a lot of cut blocks and an interesting week of preparation. Josh, what do you recall? I mean, obviously they were going to try and free up you and Mailing to go run around and make some plays and hit people. But what do you recall about what was happening about 10 yards in front of you?
The first thing I recall is feeling bad for the freshmen and sophomores that week. They were getting tackled left and right. We were live all week that week. We didn't care. Coach Jack was like, "Listen, they're not going to beat us running," and that's for facts. So that was a very hard week, but it was a very fun week. But coming into the game, we never seen nothing like it. Nobody ever ran triple option on us, wing flex back. So it was a very adjusting game. We had the first half, we didn't really know how to respond to it. And then thankful to Coach Jack, he knew what to do after that halftime. So we were able to respond and cut down all those yards. And it ended up being a close game. Slipped through our fingernails with a dude who's never kicked a field goal. He had one field goal that whole season. That whole season he had one field goal, and he makes that one. So that was very crazy. But it was a crazy game.
Brady, let me ask you. I just remember standing on the field and Harding's running the football, and it's like playing with a running clock because they're not throwing it, and if they're moving the chains how they want to, that clock's just going to keep on going. And I just remember looking at the clock going, man, this game's going to be played in like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it was just like the quarter was flying by, and it was halftime like in an instant. Were you guys a little bit concerned as an offense that they were going to try and play a little keep away and really limit what you guys were going to get for a play count?
We knew going in our play count was going to be low. We knew they were going to try to run the football and just take all the time in the play clock and then snap the football. Take all the time in the play clock, snap the football. So we knew our possessions were very valuable at that time. We're going to be in that game, I should say. But, I mean, if I'm being honest, it was a boring game because you go, you know what I mean? They just drag down the field slowly, and they just, like you said, they drain the clock. You finally get out there and say you do go 3 and out, or you maybe have 5-6 plays. You're just getting loosened up, and then boom, they go and take 5, 6, 7 minutes off the clock, and that's not. I mean, our defense was doing a heck of a job, but they would get just enough to get the first down. You know what I'm saying? They would take 3 more plays and just get 11 yards to move the chains. And I mean, as an offensive player, stand there like getting a little cold, and you got to stay mentally engaged in the game and stuff. Obviously, it's a playoff game, we all were, but it's different than in and out, fast-paced game. It was different for us because we haven't seen an offense like that, and we were used to getting out on the field more because our defense was so good at takeaways, but they didn't throw the ball a lot. So
now, Brady, you end up catching a touchdown where you end up going flying and your feet are going over your head and the whole deal. Did you end up getting injured on that play you caught in the end zone where there's bodies underneath you and you're getting undercut and all that, or?
At that point, I think in the playoff game, nothing. I could have probably got knocked out in that one, but anyone probably could have got knocked out, and they're still playing in that game just because of the playoff game. Just it was so hyped up, and I felt pretty good in that game. But yeah, it was just it was a strange game, is how I would put it, just because of how they would take so much time off the clock, and that was what they were trying to do. But it had to be painful to watch. I gotta say. I mean, that's not an exciting game to watch.
Josh, I don't recall real well, but in the third quarter, did you guys go more to a kind of a base look and just kind of play them a little bit more that way instead of kind of some of the specialization you guys were doing in the first half? Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, so I had got hurt in the first quarter, I think, and they were questioning on if they wanted to put me back in the game. So when they did put me back in the game, we went to a cover one stack where I was on top of mailing, and coach
Right.
literally said, "All right, everybody has their little position, everybody has their responsibility, but I want mailing and Joshua to go cover the running back and quarterback. That's all y'all responsibility." But he was basically saying, make the lane open for them to and let them go and work. And it started working out. They wasn't able to run as hard anymore, so the adjustment was necessary. Just slipped out the fingers at the end, man, right out the end.
No, I get you. I get you. So, when you guys, obviously you can't change the outcome of that game. When you guys now take a look back, we talked a little bit to John about how he looked at his career in some of the highlighted games. Brady, what comes to mind for you as maybe your favorite or most kind of signature game that you think of as a Cougar?
That Mankato game, our senior year, was just a proud moment. I think you mentioned it, that feeling you had after the game as a fan. You were proud because that was the one you wanted to get. Mankato was just that big school that everyone wanted to beat, and we for the 4 years prior to that, we weren't able to beat them. And so that Mankato game definitely sticks out to me as my senior season as a big time game, and also that Duluth game 2 years prior to that at home when we won. I think it was 2 years prior to that. That was
the 2015. Yeah.
That was another big game that I thought, just because that's all you heard about in the NSIC was how good Duluth was and how many championships they got and how good Mankato was. And it was never, people somewhat talked about Winona and USF in that mix a little bit in Augustana once in a while, but the two powerhouses on the north and the south were Duluth and Mankato. So for us to start to transition my junior and senior year into we were now the powerhouse, that was kind of a cool, proud moment, and those two games stick out probably the most to me.
Josh, how about yourself?
I'd probably say against SMSU my sophomore year. I ended up actually getting a Player of the Week that week, so that was actually a pretty awesome accomplishment. They moved me to backer that week, so coach was like, "Listen, I'm gonna give you a special lesson," and they really he gave me a full description on how to play backer in 1 week, and so it was actually pretty dope. And went ahead and did that, and we won the game. Like I said, we went through adversity, had all those injuries, and we were still able to put Matt Young in at safety. He came in and helped us hard. Just crazy guys came in and did what they had to do, and that was awesome. And then another experience was probably getting conference championship 16. Not a lot of USF people can say they did that. I talked to a lot of players that did play, and even though a lot of them had great accomplishment, the one thing they said, that hurts them the most is they never got a championship ring. And that's gonna always be one of my favorite memories, being in that with a lot of my best friends, a lot of guys that I'll always be in my weddings, be in my life for the rest of my life. I know I always share that memory with them. So that will forever be one of my favorite achievements.
Well, I mean, you guys are three key players that aren't going to be, anytime soon forgotten during a time when USF really had a nice run there in the Northern Sun. And I mean, who knows what happens in the future, obviously, but nobody can take any of that away from you guys now. So,
yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Stick around for a little bit. We'll end the live show here, and we'll do a quick off live wrap-up show. But I appreciate everyone tuning in. Thanks so much to our guests, Josh Butler, Brady Rose, John Tidwell, and Matt Witwicki for joining us. And we will see you again next time.